The summons came without warning, delivered through every encrypted channel the Galactic Council possessed, carrying a single instruction. All delegates were to report to the Grand Chamber immediately. No delays, no excuses. Whispers filled the spiraling corridors as species from every corner of the galaxy converged, anxious eyes flicking toward the elevated seats reserved for the humans. They had arrived early, something humans almost never did, and that alone unsettled the room. 3 figures stood calmly beside their assigned station, hands folded behind their backs, faces unreadable. There was no tension in their bodies, no aggression, yet the air around them felt heavier. As if the chamber itself adjusted to their presence, rumors raced like wildfire. The phrase predator trigger hovered in the conversations of dozens of species, but always in hushed tones, as if speaking it too loudly would summon it. The Council's own database had no proper entry, only a warning flag, classified by Human Command Authority. Access restricted. That alone terrified many. Nothing in the history of the Council had ever been locked by humans without explanation. Kertasi delegates slithered into their seats, chittering nervously. The towering Boreum kept glancing between the humans and the exit. Even the Solari, whose species felt no fear under normal circumstances, found their bioluminescent frills dimming. Every instinct screamed that something about today was different. The humans didn't talk among themselves. Instead, the soldier lowered his head and whispered something. The translators sputtered and failed, emitting static instead of words. Confused chatter broke out. Every species relied on those machines. Humans were the only ones who didn't look surprised. He invoked the predator trigger, the Kertasi envoy declared, voice rising as the lights brightened again. A weaponized psychological assault technique designed to unbalance peaceful species. The accusation hit the chamber like a shockwave. Delegates shouted objections. Some demanded sanctions. Others demanded proof of the trigger's existence. The humans simply stood there. Then Commander Hale, the leader of the human delegation, stepped forward. His movement was small, measured, but the room fell silent instantly. "With respect," he said softly, "the accusation is false." His calmness unsettled more than anger ever could. The Kertasi envoy pressed on desperately. "Your kind denies what every species has witnessed on the battlefield." But Hale didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. He merely turned his gaze toward the envoy. The temperature seemed to drop. Several delegates instinctively leaned back, unsure why their hearts suddenly pounded harder. For the first time, the Council glimpsed the faintest spark, subtle, quiet, but unmistakably real, of something they had hoped was only myth. The room held its breath. Something old and dormant within humanity had stirred. The chamber's atmosphere shifted so suddenly that some species felt it before they understood it. A pressure, subtle at first, crept across the hall like an invisible tide. Commander Hale hadn't moved after stepping forward. He simply existed in a different stillness, one that didn't belong in a diplomatic chamber. His pupils narrowed almost imperceptibly, but that minor change hit the Council like a silent detonation. The predator trigger wasn't rage. It wasn't violence. It was focus. Pure, absolute predatory focus honed by a species forged through millions of years of survival. Several delegates gasped, clutching their chests. The Boreum guard toppled to one knee, confused and trembling. The Solari, who prided themselves on their emotionless biology, found their throat membranes constricting involuntarily. Even the Kertasi envoy who had initiated the accusation froze mid-sentence, every instinct in his cold-blooded frame screaming danger. Hale didn't glare. He didn't threaten. He simply looked directly at him. Biomonitors embedded in the chamber walls began to flicker, warning signs flashing red, elevated heart rates, spiking fear hormones. Neurological overload in at least 6 different species. The chamber lighting dimmed automatically, interpreting the readings as a structural hazard. But none of this was caused by a weapon. No device, no technology. It was simply the presence of a human operating under an instinctive state their species rarely accessed. One evolution had tucked deep inside them. Hale inhaled slowly, and a ripple coursed through the chamber as dozens of species unconsciously held their breath in sync. "You are mistaken," he said softly, voice steady, unshaken. To the humans he sounded calm. To the aliens those words carried the weight of a predator correcting a prey animal. A few delegates attempted to stand, to speak, to object, only to find their muscles refusing to cooperate. Panic thickened the air. The Council had spent centuries studying humans, praising their diplomacy, their humor, their adaptability. But none of them had ever witnessed this side. The ancient predator buried beneath every polite smile and peaceful negotiation. For the first time in galactic history, the predator trigger stood fully awakened in the heart of the Council. And everyone present finally understood why humanity never needed to threaten anyone. Their existence alone was enough. The moment Commander Hale exhaled and let his gaze drift away from the Kirtasi envoy, the chamber felt as if a massive weight had been lifted. Delegates collapsed back into their seats, trembling with relief. The biomonitors steadied. Several species, embarrassed by their instinctive panic, avoided looking at the humans entirely. Hale blinked once, the faint tension in his posture evaporating, and it was as though the ancient force gripping the chamber had been switched off like a light. Chancellor Varun struggled to compose himself as he rose. His frills were pale, trembling at the edges. "Commander, what was that?" he asked carefully, as though a louder voice might reawaken whatever had just subsided. Hale folded his hands behind his back, expression calm, even apologetic. An involuntary response, he said. A defense state. Humans enter it under extreme threat or false accusations of lethal intent. He nodded toward the Kirtasi envoy, who still couldn't lift his eyes. "Your evidence was manipulated." Silence spread across the chamber, thick and uneasy. The realization dawned slowly, painfully. The footage had been engineered and the accusation intentionally crafted to provoke humanity. For the first time, council members found themselves wondering, dangerously, what would have happened if the trigger had gone fully active. The Solari delegate finally spoke, voice thin. "If such a state can unbalance dozens of species, why keep it hidden?" Hale offered a small, tired smile. "Because humanity doesn't want others to fear us. We prefer cooperation, progress, stability." His gaze swept the chamber, gentle yet unflinching. "But we cannot change what we are, only how we choose to use it." The words lingered, more unsettling than any threat. Humans were not conquerors by appetite, they were guardians by choice. But choices could change if pushed too far. As the session adjourned, species whispered among themselves, their alliances and assumptions shattered. Every delegate understood the new reality. Humanity was not the galaxy's strongest because of their weapons or technology. Their true power lay in the predator they kept chained, not to dominate, but to protect. And the galaxy would now think very carefully before giving that predator a reason to wake again.